Hello, everyone. TinaO here from Powerhouse Impact Media Group. If you haven't, just making sure my mic's on. Yeah, it is. Okay. If you haven't met me yet, I am part of the co-host team or part of the braid of Powerhouse Impact Media Group and the co-host team of Gather for Her. Gather is a bi-weekly live conversation series that we are live to LinkedIn, live to Facebook, and live to YouTube. And we meet every week with a follow-up wisdom circle post the live piece. And the wisdom circle is our way of unpacking the collective wisdom that happened in the conversation with the change maker that we were talking to. Powerhouse is a house of leaders for global impact, and we use media as the beat of our drum. And we meet with change makers, and we walk beside change makers who are living into the story of change, and that might not be your word, the story of social impact that they're in, or the story of contribution that they're in, or the story of their why, or the story of their purpose, or the story of their being. I don't know how you will language that, but in the house, we've sort of landed on the word change making. And it seems to be the unified, word that connects all of us. So I come in every week after the hour-long conversation that we have on LinkedIn to kind of give you I'm going to date myself now, but the Coles Notes version, which is what I grew up in. Remember those days when you didn't want to read the book in high school, so you just read the Coles Notes? Yeah, that's where I am. So I want to offer you what I heard, and please note it's what I heard. You will have your own version of that, and my co-hosts would have their own version of what they heard as well. Ashley Richard is a granddaughter. Ashley Richard is a change maker of listening into inclusion. She's a change maker of teaching us an understanding of embodied inclusion. WEC is the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge, or Entrepreneurial, or Entrepreneur, I'm saying this wrong. It is entrepreneurship. I'm going to read it. Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. And what arrived in our conversation today was an invitation. The big one that I heard was an invitation for patience. And she gave us a great example of in a typical, I'm going to call it corporate structure or organizational structure, where we receive funding or get paid to deliver on a thing, like to deliver on change work, or to deliver on inclusion, deliver on something, engagement, whatever the word is. There's a timeline attached to that. A year, 2 years, 6 months, whatever. And in that world, there's like a finite time to get the thing done for what the money's for. And what Ashley reminded us in this word of patience, that if we're really in the conversation of change, of reconciliation, of indigenizing, of reconciliation with the land, reconciliation, and I'm using now reconciliation in a broader global sense, because reconciliation in Canada has its own Indigenous story, and if we're really committed to reconciliation in action, in whatever that means to you as a listener, what's required of us is relationship first, and relationship first can take 2 years. That can take 2 years. And so sometimes the funds that we've actually been given to deliver on the thing that is our reconciliation in action, it's moving so fast. Like the money's supposed to be spent before relationships even happened. That's not to name this as a problem. It's to name it as a rhythm that we're invited to look at. Is it working? I don't know. I can't answer that for you. And what I love about listening to Ashley is neither does she. She doesn't answer. She talks about concepts. And so that was the first thing, is an invitation to look at the efficiency, I'm going to say, of patience. of relationship first. Another piece that came up in the conversation happened right in the beginning when Ashley was introducing her story, and the embodied way her ancestral story was like it was living right now was really the only thing almost that I needed. I was like, wow, if this is all I took out of this, the learning of not talking about my journey before me as history, but talking about my journey before me, like my history, as a living part of my story right now, changes the way that I live in the world already. So there was that piece. There was also what really moved me as a person who's devoted to story, is there was a piece of something her grandmother had said to her about saying to her at a time when it really didn't seem like it was significant because she was younger or what have you. Her grandmother said to her, "You are a powerful woman and you will be more powerful than me." And of course, at that time, it was like, oh, that's just things, grandparents say to you, and that's whatever. But as she lives into the story of her life, what I saw was, wow, she is taking the next step of a story that came before her. Her grandmother was this fearless woman that built things and built places of inclusivity. And now in Ashley's work, she is building things of inclusivity, and it was like, wow, that's the more powerful than me next step of her grandmother. And so I really connected the dots to her knowing and embodying her ancestral journey and story to connect to her purpose work. Another piece that came up was what really struck for me was Ashley used this term about having the privilege to speak to truth and reconciliation from the lens that she has. And the privilege is connected to being someone who has been to university, works in a large organization. The privilege of speaking to truth and reconciliation from all of that education is privilege. And then she invited us to remember that when we're speaking or living into or opening up space around truth and reconciliation, that some of us will show up to the table not having that education, not having that privilege. They're in the place of raw experience, meaning, and when I say raw, like, it's not like that's not in everyone, but it's so what I'm trying to say is sometimes the packaging, there's no packaging. What shows up is emotion, is our emotion. It's like living the right now and remembering that is as valid and as welcome to the table as those who have the education, and making space for that. She also offered, again, I'll suggest that's what inclusivity looks like. It looks like all at the table in whatever state of being is at the table. And then she also offered, this not last piece, but I'm going to offer it as the last piece because I want you to listen to the whole conversation. Was that empathy, inclusivity means empathy for all, meaning if you don't know what to say, if you're a non-Indigenous person and you don't know what you're supposed to be doing in this space, empathy for that. And if you are an Indigenous person in whatever state you are in as a result of the atrocities done to you, having empathy for that, and empathy on all sides, while holding a container of safety for all. That I added that. I think that's just one of my burning pieces, is ensuring, like, to me, inclusivity happens when safety happens. And then Christina Benty closed us, with a question that I don't even know I can articulate it the way she said it. But what landed for me was she talked about the burning in I felt it in my throat, the burning yes inside of you, and to listen to that burning yes. And she noted that Ashley Richard from WEC and a granddaughter spoke to multiple burning yeses in her journey, and invited each of us as a listener to notice how our burning yeses live inside of us, and the burning yes of change, the burning yes of contribution, the burning yes of a next step. So thanks for listening. I'm TinaO from Powerhouse Impact Media Group. We're going to unpack all of these conversations in our next Gather for Her Wisdom Circle, which happens in a private Zoom. Go to powerhouse.com, gather for her registration. So powerhouse.com to gather to registration to receive a direct invite to attend that wisdom circle in real time. It is not recorded because it's meant to be a place where you can be messy, which means if we record it, people don't always show up in that inclusive, authentic messiness. And that is always welcome with us in the house. Thanks for being with me. We will see you next week in our wisdom circle. And if I don't see you there, I will see you when we go live again for our next Gather for Her conversation, live to LinkedIn and live to Facebook in 2 weeks. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.